Dr. Jha, are we still facing a tripledemic where RSV, flu, and COVID are all surging at once over the holidays?
Yeah, so we have seen, certainly in the last month, 3 highly contagious respiratory viruses. As you mentioned, RSV, flu, and COVID. Let me tell you what we know about them. RSV nationally looks like it has clearly peaked and is on its way down. There's still places that have very high levels of RSV. But nationally, there's no question in my mind, RSV is heading down. Flu is rising in many parts of the country. We're probably the worst flu outbreak we've seen in a decade. There are some places where flu may be peaking, but it's very early data. But a lot of flu out there, again, the worst in a decade. And then we talked about COVID, where clearly it's on an upswing with increasing number of cases.
Dr. Jha, thank you. Two questions for you. One, are there particular hot spots right now you're concerned about when it comes to COVID rise? And then secondly, based on all 3 of the viruses you've been discussing, could you talk to us about the strain on the nation's hospitals?
Yeah. So particular hotspots, we're seeing cases increase in about 90% of the country. So it is sort of rising in lots of places across the country. So there's not one that I think is is particularly worse off. Obviously, the levels are different across the country, but it is rising pretty much uniformly, and it makes sense, right? We just had the Thanksgiving holidays; it's getting colder. Even in the southern parts of the country, it's still getting colder. Obviously, we tend to see more in the northern half of the country because it is colder up here. People are spending more time indoors. In terms of hospital strain, this is something we monitor very, very closely. We look at a whole bunch of national data every day. We are talking to states and jurisdictions every day. Well, not every state and every jurisdiction every day, but on an ongoing basis. I would say in the last 10 days, I have probably spoken to, I or members of my team, a dozen or more states and cities, and our first question is, how are the hospitals doing? Do you need more help there? We have a very clear plan. If a city or a state gets into trouble where they really just can't manage, that they can reach out to the federal government. We have a whole set of resources. We can evaluate. We can send in equipment. We can send in personnel. So we stand ready to help cities and states if and or when they need it. Obviously, the single most important thing we can do to make sure that there aren't constraints and there aren't real problems with hospital capacity is if people got vaccinated, they are far less likely to get hospitalized for both flu and COVID. And that's the biggest thing Americans can do to make sure their hospitals are functional for all the other reasons we need hospitals.
Karen Lester.